So live demos are awkward. Software is tricky. Bad things happen. Bad things, not good things, happen. The weird news, I guess the good news, we'll call it good, is that because of the error that we all saw yesterday, that was able to provide our support team and our engineering team with enough information to actually identify what went wrong. So the fix hasn't yet been in place, but in case you encounter a weird error like you just saw, again, send a message to support@tidepool.org. When in doubt, always contact that support email address. So we can at least log that information in our system, and we can always follow up with you whenever a fix is deployed. That said, enough about Tidepool Uploader. Let's talk about what happens after your data has been uploaded. So you're using Tidepool Uploader to connect to your insulin pump, your CGM, your blood glucose meter. All that data gets in. You hear the lovely little chime to indicate a successful upload, which took a lot of time to actually decide. Like there was a lot of time put into, is this the right chime for a successful upload, for a failure? Weird decisions that get made whenever you're making software. Anyway, after your data is uploaded, it's time to view that data, right? You want to try and take some time to make sense of all the numbers, all the bits and bobs, all the digits, all of the information that is coming off of these diabetes devices. Tidepool Web is where you're going to go to make the most of that, to understand what's happening, to see what's going on there. So a couple of things before I reshare my screen and walk you through some of the basics around Tidepool Web. First is that Google Chrome is required. I do know, and I do receive plenty of emails from all of you out there that indicate you prefer to use something like Firefox or Safari or Edge or whatever. We hear you. We are logging those requests. Again, if you prefer to use a different browser, that's fine. Please send an email to support@tidepool.org about that. But until then, Google Chrome is required to view Tidepool data. So now let's take a quick look at what we've got going on here. I'm going to share my screen one more time. And now we have ourselves looking at our primary demo account, James Jellyfish. I'm going to work kind of quickly through some of these and just highlight some things that I think are important about each of the different views. If you would like a more detailed walkthrough of each of these different views within Tidepool, go to support.tidepool.org and you can actually search for any of the views within Tidepool Web, and there's a line-by-line breakdown of everything you see on the screen. When it comes to the basics view here, this is going to be showing you up to 3 weeks of data based off of the most recent upload that you've done. So you can see right now, based off of when the last upload to this account took place, that's going to be May 13th through the 31st of 2019. There are reasons that this account has a slightly lower data, but the actual data display doesn't necessarily matter here. But when it comes to the basics view, a few things to keep in mind. On the right, we have summary statistics that will summarize all the data that's coming off of your insulin pump, your CGM, your blood glucose meter, all that in one place right here. And this is a very quick at a glance indication of how you're doing in terms of your blood glucose targets. So for this account, the blood glucose target for high and low thresholds is 65 to 180. So based off of that, you can see that James Jellyfish is spending on average per day 14 hours and 53 minutes within that blood glucose target. And you can see that because you've got the big green bar right here, and you can hover over each of these different sections to see the blood glucose range. Here for time above range, it's 180 to 250, and how much time you're spending on average per day based off of CGM data in terms of your blood glucose targets. How do I know that CGM data? Because there's a toggle right up here that is right now selected to CGM. If you're only uploading blood glucose meter data to your Tidepool account, you can actually toggle this to BGM, and all of our summary stats around blood glucose values would be based off of your meter data instead. So there's still plenty of opportunity to get those insights that you're looking for if you're not using a CGM and you're still using Tidepool software. Moving down this sidebar over here, we have our average blood glucose value based off of CGM data, sensor usage percentage, so how often I'm wearing my CGM. We have from the insulin pump our average daily total insulin. And you can see our basal and bolus breakdown whenever you hover over each of these bars over here. Again, based off of your goals, your objectives, what you're deciding between you and your care team. For me, I like to see a good 50-50 split between my basal and bolus insulin delivery. But again, that's just for me and my diabetes. But at the very end of the day, the data is going to be informing whether or not you are achieving the goals that you're setting for your diabetes management. We also have average daily carbs. Again, this is going to be data coming off of your insulin pump. So the carbs that you're actually entering into your, they're actually entering into your insulin pump. That's what's going to be displayed here. So if you're eating more than you're actually declaring in terms of the carb values that you're entering, then it may not necessarily be accurate. But in terms of what you're telling your insulin pump about, that's what these average daily carbs represent. Lastly, down here is GMI. You can hover over this little tooltip here, and it might be kind of small for you to see right now, but I'm going to walk you through it anyway. GMI is an approximation of A1C based off of CGM data. So this is not replacing the blood test, but especially now, in these crazy times, you're likely not going out for something like that in terms of blood work. So you can use this GMI as an approximation of your A1C and use that value and your time and range stats to get a good idea of how you're doing in terms of your blood glucose targets. Again, it's not replacing the blood test, but in terms of what the data is able to display for you, that's where Tidepool can help identify where things are where you need to go. We have a question in from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Thank you. Is there any way to make the blood glucose meter CGM toggle default to CGM? I always have to change it. That's a great question. I believe that depends on the amount of data that's coming in. For this account, for the James Jellyfish account, because I have more CGM data than blood glucose meter data, it actually is defaulting to CGM. So in terms of what you are actually seeing there, that might indicate that you have more blood glucose meter values and readings that you have uploaded to your account as opposed to your CGM readings. If that's not the case and there's something else going on that we might need to investigate, again, send an email to support@tidepool.org and we'll take a look at that one real quick. Another follow-up question from Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for these questions. What is the value of the insulin to body weight ratio? Honestly, I don't know. My doctor likes to use this one. I don't actually look at this because I, one, don't want to put in my weight because I'm a little self-conscious about that. There's shelter at home stuff. I'm not really worried about that. But in terms of the actual medical value of that, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. My doctor utilizes it and he seems to think that my values are okay. I'm not the right person to actually be informed on that. So I'm going to look into that and we'll get back to you tomorrow on what the actual value of that is. How about that? Okay. And another question in from from Sarah. Can it show carb counts and insulin doses added to Dexcom? So this is talking about, I believe you're adding those events into your Dexcom, either through your Dexcom mobile app or the Dexcom receiver. Currently, no. The carb data that we're displaying is coming off of your insulin pump. And the insulin dosing we're displaying, again, is coming off of your insulin pump. I'm going to hop over to the daily view in a second to show you a couple of other things that we can do around the data in the events that you're entering. But in terms of the additional data coming off of your Dexcom CGM, we're only pulling those CGM blood glucose reading values into display for your data. Thank you for the question, Sarah. Really appreciate that one. So one other thing to note, in case you have to send a message to your doctor one way or another, let me change really quick my screen share. What is new share desktop? Here we go. If you are actually able to, you can click copy as text right here. And this will copy everything that you see in this on the sidebar over here, as well as summary stats from the center console here between BG readings, your boluses, your fusion site changes, and your basal data. That data can actually be pasted as text. So you can very quickly see all of these summary stats. Let me bring this text editor over here. There we go. So when you take a look at everything you saw on the right side here, all of that is actually being displayed, or is being able to, you can copy that as text and paste that into an email, into chart notes, or anything like that. So if you're seeing something in your Tidepool data, you can copy these datas or these values out, paste it into an email you're about to send to your CDE or your endocrinologist, and have a very quick reference point, as opposed to needing to look at Tidepool Web, remember the number, copy it over into an email or anything like that. Clicking copy as text can be a very quick way to get that data out into a more presentable format for somebody else to read and interpret. So that's just another quick tip there for that one. Two other quick things I want to show you before we get ourselves out of here for the day. The trends view, we're going to spend more time looking at this with my data in particular, but I want to highlight a couple of things here. This is looking at, by default, CGM data over a 1, 2, or 4 week period. We can click this button right here to show you 4 weeks of CGM data once this loads. And you can actually adjust the different days that are displayed within the trends view as well. So if you want to look at, for example, 4 weeks of weekend CGM values, you can click this checkbox to remove Monday through Friday and only look at Saturday through Sunday, 4 weeks of data. In the time before global pandemic, if you had, for example, swim practice on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you could look at 4 weeks of Monday, Wednesday, Friday CGM data and look at the trends and see what your CGM data is telling you about where your blood glucose is over different times of the day. Each of these vertical bars represent a half hour of time. And as you're going through, let's bring all this back. You can use the trends view to very quickly identify, based off of the median, which is the colored dot here in the middle, where on average your blood glucose data is trending. So if you see a consistent increase in terms of the median, which you can see from this 9 p.m. to midnight range right here, there's a consistent increase both in my median as well as the rest of my CGM values. That's an area of opportunity for improvement. So you can focus in on that 9 p.m. to midnight range, all around things you might be snacking, around your insulin pump settings, any other activities that you have going on there. Again, the trends view is a great way to identify at a glance where is an area of opportunity I can focus on to improve my diabetes management. Again, based off of your own goals and goals that you're setting with your care team. One other addition point here, I mentioned the copy as text button from the basics view. We also have copy as text available from the trends view. You can see very quickly all these summary stats on the right side here are again pasted as text. So again, if you're going to use Tidepool Web to be the foundation of a message you want to send to your care team, you can copy this data out of Tidepool, paste that into an email, and then add an additional text and commentary around the message you're going to send to them. Finally, the daily view, which is kind of where Tidepool shines. This is where everything comes together in one place, right? Let's find a good day here. So on May 15th, this is my favorite day to show off because it has a little bit of everything here. This is going to be showing your CGM, your blood glucose meter, and your insulin pump values and data all in one place together, all synced up. The line represents your CGM values. You can hover over this entire line to see the different timestamps and CGM values based off of what your Dexcom or your Medtronic sensor or your Freestyle Libre are reading. Larger dots indicate either manual blood glucose readings, or in the case of blood glucose meter, we've changed the source here to meter, and that would be where you're seeing those values then and there. When it comes to everything that you're seeing in the bolus and carb section, as you can see when I'm bolusing for breakfast, when I'm bolusing for lunch, or remembering to bolus for lunch, and what I'm doing for dinner. You can hover over each of these to see additional details around the insulin pump settings at the time of those boluses, as well as if there were insulin on board. You can see that indicated as an IOB referenced here. Lastly, in the basal rate section, there's a yard work happening across the street. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's distracting me, and I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for the yard work. Anyway, basal rates. Here you can see the solid lines represent scheduled basal delivery. So this is what I have programmed in my insulin pump, and that's whenever things are happening as expected. This, at the time of this upload, I was running basal IQ, so my t:slim was actually automatically suspending my basal delivery depending on whether the algorithm was predicting a low was upcoming. So you can see those S's and R's indicated here. You can hover over that to see a pump suspension. This one lasted 25 minutes. Here we have another pump suspension for another 25 minutes. In the case of a temporary basal, that's indicated here by the dotted line and the lighter blue shade in the basal rate section. So again, scheduled basal rate is the solid line. Dotted line indicates a temporary basal of an increase or a decrease. You can hover over that section to very quickly see what that temporary basal was and get a little more insight there. So on a day-to-day basis, you can very quickly see how things are going in terms of your CGM values. Are you bolusing for breakfast at the same time every day? And those sorts of things. As you scroll around, and you can either use these arrows at the top, or you can actually manually adjust and change the sort of 24-hour time period you're looking at. Your stats on the right will adjust and be reflected on the data you're displaying. So you can sort of kind of cheat the system here and get to almost 24 hours in range, for example, based off of that. But if for whatever reason you wanted to look at 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., or 6 a.m. to 6 a.m., excuse me, like you're seeing right here, there's an opportunity to do that based off of how you are displaying that. Lastly, the one thing I want to highlight here, and this is something we're going to focus on tomorrow, are the notes. Within Tidepool, we have a concept of notes. This is how you can add context to your diabetes data. This can be documenting dog walks, site changes, sensor changes, menstrual cycles, specifically what you ate for breakfast, your exercise routines. Anything that adds context to your diabetes data is something that I would recommend making a note for. I'm going to show you what the notes look like within my data tomorrow around some things that I've been actually trying to keep track of in terms of trying to improve my own diabetes management. But very quickly, you can see what these little notes are. They show up in your timeline at the top here. And then also, if you're using Tidepool Mobile on an iPhone or an Android phone, those notes will show up there as well. We've got a couple more questions here, and then we're going to call this very quick webinar a conclusion. So we got one in from James. Thank you, James. In the trends window, when you hover over a 30-minute bar, how do you tell what the average blood glucose reading is? That's a great question. This is actually sort of a feature request because we don't display the actual median value right now This is a request that we have logged in with our design and engineering teams. It's something I do hope that we will address in the future. But just to show off what James is talking about here, you can see these colored dots, and actually we can reduce this to only show the median here. Currently, we're actually not showing that value, which is kind of a bummer, but it is something that we are, again, planning to address in a future update for Tidepool Web. So thanks for that, James. There obviously are things that we can do to improve our software, and this is one of them down the road as we try to address that. Question in from Rhonda. Hi, Rhonda. Thank you. So if it says basal 150, does it mean it is 50% higher than what you entered? Does this one copy as well? Two different questions there around the temporary basals. Let me bring that back real quick. So for the temporary basal within my T-SLIM, it has a concept of percentage, not necessarily an amount. So I have in my profile scheduled at 0.8 units per hour for this time period. And then within my T-SLIM, my option is to set a temporary basal rate of 150%. So I'm actually giving a 50% increase to my normal basal rate, and that's what that represents there. And again, I actually am not familiar with how Medtronic pumps do it because I don't use a Medtronic pump. I've only used the T-SLIM for my diabetes career, if you want to call it that. But in terms of the temporary basal display, it's based off of the data coming off the pump. So if you were, however we are pulling that data off is how we are displaying it to you. So within the T-SLIM, like I said, it has a concept of percentages as it relates to the temporary basal increase or decrease. And I can actually show you what that looks like over here. Here's a temporary basal decrease. So I brought it down to 33% of what my normal basal rate is for this lower temporary basal that I issued overnight on this day. Does this one copy as well? So in terms of the copy as text feature, Rhonda, that doesn't actually exist for the daily view. But if you click the print button here, it's almost like you prompted me just perfectly. This will generate a PDF that includes everything that you see from the basics view and the last 15 days from the daily view, as well as readings from your blood glucose log, the last 30 days of that, and your device settings from your insulin pump. This can be either printed off, you can hold it in your hands, or you can save this as a PDF and send it as an email attachment to your provider if they are looking for something in particular. So that is currently how we offer to get the data from the daily view offline, as it were. But in terms of anything else, there is no other sort of text sort of translation feature as it relates to the daily view currently. Thank you for your question, Rhonda. Two more questions. I see one from Maureen. Thank you, Maureen. I recently had to start on a new pump, and due to the pump failure, I recently had to start on a new pump due to a pump failure. Sorry about that one. Is there previous data on the previous pump now lost? I was uploading regularly, but I think I might need the serial number for the old pump. So right now we don't have a concept of history. Let me bring it back here. I'm just bringing it back full screen. Hi, everybody. So we don't have, we are keeping track of the settings changes whenever you're uploading your insulin pump data. We are keeping track of the settings changes on the Tidepool backend, on the Tidepool database. We're not displaying those changes currently. So there's some work to do on our end to sort of bring back that history of things that may have changed, which would include something like your pump serial number. So if you have yet to upload your new pump, you would still have all the data from your old pump there. So the thing I would actually check is to go to your Tidepool account and go to your device settings, which I will show you real quick. If you go to your device settings, that will actually be a way for you to pull that information out as you have it. That's the last thing that I think I can think about right there. So you can see right now, here's a serial number from my old insulin pump, Marine. But if you have uploaded your data since you got the new pump, then for the time being, those settings are lost. And I don't think there's a way to get that out of Tidepool. If you can send the message, if this is the case for you, send a message to support@tidepool.org and we'll take a look and see what we can find on our end, and we'll be able to help you out there. But broadly speaking, this is going to speak to a larger update to Tidepool Web, so we can actually display those settings changes over time, so you can keep track of that. Thank you for that one, Maureen. Last one in from Deb. Can you see multiple days on top of each other in order to quickly identify patterns? This, unfortunately, is the most requested thing about Tidepool Web. We call this internally our stacked daily view. Just bringing you all kinds of lingo today. The concept of showing multiple days together, so you can see those CGM lines, you can see when those boluses are happening together. That's something we do intend to deliver in the future. It's not on the immediate roadmap. Again, more lingo. It's something we do intend to provide in Tidepool Web in the future. Don't have a date on when that's going to be available just yet, but it's something we are eager to provide down the road, but it's not available today. So unfortunately, not right now, Deb. Sorry about that. last thing I want to show you before we get out of here is the concept of sharing your data. For all of you out there in Radio Land, where is Tidepool? All right, so for Tidepool, here we go. When it comes to the sort of a core concept of the Tidepool, people with diabetes own their data. They are the ones in charge of who has access to it. If you are new to Tidepool and you are looking to share your data with your provider, whenever you log into your account, you can click the share button right here and actually invite somebody else to view your data. This can be your neighbor, your spouse, your cat if they have an email account, or your endocrinologist or your CDE. The catch here is that they have to have their own Tidepool account as well. So what you can actually do is when you go to this share interface, click share, put in an email address. We'll just put in my email address, which is christopher@tidepool.org. Now you all know who I am. You can send me an email if you have any other questions about this stuff. But you put in the email address associated with their Tidepool account and you click invite. And then an invitation is sent by the Tidepool system to your CDE, to your endo, to your cat, to whoever, to actually accept that invitation to view data on their end. Once they accept that invitation, then they're able to log into their own Tidepool account and view your data. So if in the case of a global pandemic, you are uploading your diabetes data at home and you want your CDE to look at your diabetes data, you can invite them to view your Tidepool account. And then whenever they log into their clinician account at home, then they'll be able to see everything that you're uploading. So that's just a pro tip there. And again, that's something that we'll be looking to, I'll highlight that again tomorrow. And it is something that I do regularly talk about in terms of, that we regularly talk about in terms of access to data. The thing to keep in mind though, is that you as a person with diabetes are always in control of your data with Tidepool. That's all I've got today. Tomorrow we'll be looking at my data specifically, and I'll show you how I'm using notes to actually help identify things that I need to continue to work on in terms of improving my diabetes management. Thank you everybody for spending some time with me today. Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day.